She never expected her quiet afternoon at Mike's corner store to turn into a showdown that would expose a criminal empire. But when 5 members of the notorious Red Dragons motorcycle gang decided to harass the woman in the wheelchair, they had no idea they were messing with one of the military's most lethal combat specialists, Alexandra Alex. Winters had spent years hiding her true identity, masking her abilities behind the facade of a disabled veteran. The wheelchair wasn't a lie. The IED in Afghanistan had taken her legs. But what these bikers didn't know was that she was now an undercover FBI agent investigating their multi-million-dollar weapons trafficking operation. They thought they saw weakness. They saw a target. They circled her like vultures, laughing, taunting, pushing her chair, spilling her groceries. But when their leader, Marcus the Snake Wilson, laid his hands on her shoulders, something snapped in less than 30 seconds. 3 bikers were on the ground. One was unconscious, and their leader was staring down the barrel of his own gun, now firmly in Alex's grip. What happened next would send shockwaves through the criminal underworld, as one woman's quest for justice would dismantle the largest weapons trafficking ring in the Pacific Northwest. Before we continue with this story, tell us where you're watching from. If you like this story, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have special story for you. The evening sun cast long shadows across Main Street. In Pine Valley, Montana, Alex Winters wheeled herself steadily along the cracked sidewalk, her movements precise, and measured the familiar weight of her concealed Sig Sauer pressed against her lower back, hidden beneath her casual jacket. 3 years in this chair had taught her to adapt, to modify every combat technique she'd learned in the military. The wheels weren't a weakness, they were just another tool. Jenny's voice drifted from the cafe doorway. Alex, your usual. The young cafe owner, Sam's smile was genuine, one of the few real connections Alex had allowed herself to make in this town. Thanks, Jenny. Been one of those days. Alex maneuvered her chair through the entrance, automatically noting exits, sightlines, potential cover. Old habits died hard. Her secure phone buzzed. Agent Cooper's third message today. The weapon shipment they'd been tracking was coming in soon. The Red Dragons were getting sloppy, confident. That's why she was here, playing the role of a broken veteran in a small Montana town. Nobody looked twice at her, and that's exactly what made her dangerous. The cafe door chimed. Alex's reflection in the window showed 3 men entering, leather vests, Red Dragons patches. Her heart rate stayed steady as she sipped her coffee. This wasn't the first time they crossed paths, but something felt different today. The energy was wrong. Well, look who it is. Marcus Wilson's voice carried across the cafe. Our favorite local hero. The gang leader's mock respect dripped with venom. 2 more dragons entered behind him, spreading out in a familiar tactical pattern that made Alex's combat instincts fire. Evening, Marcus. She kept her voice neutral, wheelchair angled for quick movement. Coffee's fresh if you want some. Marcus stepped closer, his breath reeking of cigarettes and cheap whiskey. You know what I can't figure out? He leaned down, invading her space. How someone like you manages to always be around when we're doing business. It's almost like you're watching us. The other patrons were quietly slipping out, leaving only Jenny behind the counter, her hand likely on the silent alarm. Alex could take all 5 men. She'd run the scenarios 100 times, but it would blow her cover. Months of investigation wasted. I live here, Marcus, small town. She shrugged, playing the role she'd perfected. Not many places to be. Rick Razor Thompson, Marcus's right hand, circled behind her chair. Maybe we should help you find somewhere else to be. Sweetheart, accidents happen to people in chairs all the time. Alex's fingers tightened imperceptibly on her armrest. One quick move, and she could dislocate Razor's knee. The modified Krav Maga techniques she developed worked perfectly from a seated position, but she held back, remembering Cooper's words. The weapons bust is everything we need, the whole network. Marcus grabbed her chair's handle, spinning her to face him. You've got 1 day to leave town. After that, he grinned, revealing gold-capped teeth. Well, let's just say we know people at the VA. Benefit checks can get lost real easy. The old Alex would have put him down right there. But 3 years of undercover work had taught her patience. Sometimes you had to lose the battle to win the war. She let Fear show in her eyes, just enough to be convincing. I understand. She looked down, hating the tremor she forced into her voice. Please, I don't want any trouble. Marcus straightened, satisfied. Smart girl, boys. Let's show her what trouble looks like anyway. He nodded to Mike. Crusher Davis, the gang enforcer. Crusher grinned, reaching for Alex's chair. In that moment, time seemed to slow. Alex saw everything with crystal clarity. Jenny reaching for the phone. Marcus' smug smile. The way Crusher's weight was shifted forward, leaving him vulnerable. She could end this in seconds. Instead, she forced herself to flinch as Crusher grabbed her chair and tilted it, spilling her onto the floor. Coffee splashed across the tiles. The gang's laughter echoed off the walls as Alex lay there playing helpless, burning their faces into her memory. Each one would pay, but not today. Today, she was building their confidence, letting them think they were untouchable. She'd learned in Afghanistan that the deadliest predators were patient. Oops, Crusher laughed. Looks like someone needs one of those. I've fallen, and I can't get up buttons. Alex struggled to right herself, making it look difficult. Every instinct screamed at her to fight back, but the mission came first. It always had. As she finally pulled herself back into her chair, Marcus leaned down one last time. Remember one day, then we stopped being nice. He straightened her chair with mock courtesy. Let's roll, boys. Our friend here needs to pack. The dragon swaggered out, leaving behind the stench of leather and cruelty. Only when their motorcycles roared away did Alex let her mask slip slightly. Jenny rushed over with towel, her face flushed with anger. Alex, I'm so sorry. I called Chief Anderson. He's on his way. Those bastards can't just. It's okay, Jenny. Alex's voice was steady now, her eyes hard as she watched the bikes disappear around the corner. Everything's exactly the way it needs to be. Her phone buzzed again. Cooper, the weapon shipment was confirmed for tomorrow night. The Dragons had just made their biggest mistake, but they didn't know it yet. They thought they'd intimidated a helpless woman. Instead, they'd given her the perfect excuse to be anywhere in town, watching them under the guise of leaving. Alex smiled slightly as she dried herself off. Sometimes the best weapon was letting your enemy think they'd already won. Night had fallen over Pine Valley as Alex wheeled herself into her small ranch house on the outskirts of town. The modest home, carefully chosen for its clear sight lines and multiple escape routes, had been her base of operations for the past 3 years. She locked the door, ran her usual security checks, then finally allowed her shoulders to relax. The burner phone, hidden in her chair's compartment, buzzed. Agent Cooper's voice was tense when she answered. Tell me you didn't engage them. Winters relaxed. David, I played my part perfectly. Alex moved to her computer setup, hidden behind a false wall panel. They did exactly what we expected. Tried to run me out of town. The weapon shipment is definitely coming tomorrow night. My source says it's big military-grade hardware bound for cartel buyers in Mexico. We can't afford any mistakes. Alex's jaw tightened. They threatened to mess with my VA benefits. David, real original, should have seen their faces, so proud of themselves for intimidating the poor helpless veteran. Alex Cooper's tone held a warning. I know the mission comes first. She pulled up surveillance photos of the Dragons compound, but when this is over, I'm going to teach them some manners. After ending the call, Alex wheeled to her bedroom, transferring herself onto the bed with practice ease. Her legs, or what remained of them, ached with phantom pain, a reminder of that day in Afghanistan that had changed everything. The memories flooded back. Vid and her team moving through the dusty streets of Kandahar, the children playing. Nearby, the flash of metal that caught her eye, an IED trigger man in a window. She'd had a choice: take the shot from her position or run into the open to warn the kids. It wasn't really a choice at all. The explosion had taken her legs, but she'd saved 12 children. The military had called her a hero, awarded her medals. Then they'd quietly approached her about a new mission. Her injuries made her the perfect undercover agent who would suspect a disabled veteran of being one of the FBI's top operatives. A noise outside snapped her back to the present. Footsteps on gravel, too deliberate to be casual. Alex reached for her gun, then heard a familiar whistle. Jenny brought you some dinner, the cafe owner said when Alex opened the door and information. She wheeled inside, quickly locking up behind her. The Dragons haven't changed their plans. Jenny continued, setting down a bag of food. Marcus was bragging at the bar about some big delivery happening at the old lumber mill tomorrow night around midnight. Alex nodded. Jenny had been her eyes and ears in town from the beginning, one of the few people who knew her true identity. "You're taking a risk helping me like this. Those bastards killed my brother 2 years ago. Bad batch of drugs. They were pushing. Police called it an overdose. But I know better." Jenny's eyes hardened. "Besides, somebody needs to stand up to them." As they ate, Alex's mind worked through scenarios. The lumber mill had too many access points to cover with standard FBI teams. But if the Dragons were expecting her to leave town, they'd be less cautious. She could use that. "I need you to do something for me tomorrow," Alex said finally, something that might seem strange. Jenny leaned forward. "Name it. I need you to help me spread the word that I'm leaving town. Make it convincing. Pack some boxes in your truck. Make a show of helping me move a diversion." Alex smiled. "They'll be watching. We need them confident, distracted when they see me loading up. They'll think they've won." Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Later that night, after Jenny left, Alex transferred back to her chair and moved to the hidden wall panel behind it. Alongside her computers hung a modified tactical vest. She'd spent months adapting her combat gear to work from a seated position, every strap, every pocket positioned for maximum efficiency. Her phone buzzed again, a text from Cooper. "Teams in position by 2300 hours tomorrow. Don't engage early." Alex texted back a simple acknowledgement, then began her preparations. She checked her weapons, reviewed the lumber mill blueprints, and ran through her adapted combat moves. The Dragons had no idea that every insult, every threat today had only made her more dangerous. When you've lost your legs, you learn that true strength isn't in standing tall. It's in knowing when to appear weak. She wheeled to her window. Watching the stars over the Montana mountains tomorrow would change everything. Either she'd bring down one of the largest weapons trafficking operations in the country, or she'd blow 3 years of deep cover work. And if things went wrong, her wheelchair wouldn't be an excuse, it would be her coffin. The phantom pain returned stronger this time. Alex closed her eyes, remembering the hospital after the explosion. The doctors had told her she'd never serve again, never run again, never fight again. They didn't understand that taking her legs had only made her more determined. The Dragons had made the same mistake today, as assuming that her disability made her weak. Her phone lit up with another message, this one from an unknown number. A photo appeared. Alex at the cafe today, on the ground after Crusher had tipped her chair. The caption read, "Tomorrow is your last chance." Alex smiled coldly in the darkness. The Dragons thought they were hunters, but they had no idea what was hunting them. Tomorrow, they would learn that the deadliest predator is the one they never see coming. She began her final equipment check. Each piece of gear had been modified, tested, perfected. Her wheelchair itself was a weapon-reinforced frame, hidden compartments, custom modifications that turned it from a medical device into a combat platform. Anyone who looked at her saw weakness they never noticed. The warrior hiding in plain sight. The night deepened as Alex ran through her mental preparations. Tomorrow would require perfect timing, perfect control. One mistake, and the whole operation would collapse. But she'd been training for this moment since the day she'd woken up in that hospital bed. The Dragons thought they'd scared her into running. Instead, they'd given her exactly what she needed, an excuse to be anywhere in town, watching their every move. As she finally prepared for bed, Alex thought about Jenny's brother, about all the lives the Dragons had destroyed with their operation. Tomorrow wasn't just about the weapons busted, was about justice, about showing that sometimes the most dangerous opponent is the one they've already dismissed. She set her alarm, knowing that in 24 hours everything would change. The Dragons were about to learn a lesson about underestimating their enemies, and Alex Winters, the disciplined veteran they'd mocked, would be their teacher. Dawn broke over Pine Valley with a blood-red sky. Alex watched the sunrise from her porch, sipping black coffee as she observed 2 of Marcus' men trying to be inconspicuous in their surveillance of her house. They'd been there since 5 a.m., parked in a blue pickup truck, thinking they were invisible. Amateur hour. Her secured tablet displayed the latest intelligence from Cooper. The weapon shipment was massive, enough firepower to supply a small army. RPGs Modified assault rifles, even prototype military hardware that wasn't supposed to exist outside of classified facilities. The question that had been nagging at her for months remained: how were the Dragons getting their hands on this level of equipment? The burner phone rang. "Alex, we've got movement." Jenny's voice was hushed. "Marcus just had a meeting with someone at the diner." Suit and tie type, definitely not local. They passed something under the table. Description: mid-50s, military bearing, expensive watch. C seemed real interested in the lumber mill delivery. Called Marcus' son a couple times. Alex mind raced. The missing piece was starting to form. "Jenny, I need you to get that coffee pot ready. Our plan starts now." An hour later, Alex wheeled down Main Street, making sure the Dragon surveillance team had a clear view. She packed 2 large boxes on her lap, making a show of struggling with them. Right on. Jenny pulled up in her pickup truck bed, already loaded with furniture. "Last load." "Alex," Jenny called out loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I can't believe you're really leaving." "No choice," Alex projected defeat into her voice. "Can't stay where I'm not wanted." They played their parts perfectly, the concerned friend helping the intimidated veteran pack up and leave town. Alex caught glimpses of phones being used, messages being sent. The Dragons were buying it, spreading the word that they'd successfully driven her out. By noon, half the town had heard she was leaving. Alex wheeled into the cafe one last time, keeping up appearances. The place was unusually busy. Seemed like everyone wanted to say goodbye to the disabled veteran who'd become a familiar sight over the past 3 years. Chief Anderson approached her table, coffee in hand. He was one of the few who knew her true identity. "Essential backup for what was coming." "Heard you're skipping town," he said loudly enough to be overheard. Then much quieter: "Teams are in position. Coast Guard intercepted the decoy shipment they sent up north." Alex nodded slightly, maintaining her defeated expression. "Sometimes you just know when you're not welcome anymore, Chief." The bell chimed as Marcus and Razor walked in, their timing too perfect to be coincidence. They wanted to witness their victory firsthand. Alex felt Razor's eyes on her, watching for any sign that this was an act. She gave him what he wanted: a flinch, a quick look away, hands trembling slightly on her wheels. Marcus swaggered over, clearly enjoying himself. "Moving day. A smart choice." He leaned down, voice dropping to a whisper. "But just to make sure you don't get lost on your way out." He slipped the phone into her lap. "Keep it on you. We'll be checking a tracking device." Alex had expected something like this. "Please," she let her voice crack. "I'm leaving just like you wanted." "Of course you are." Marcus straightened, smirking. "Boys, help the lady pack up. Let's make sure she gets everything." Crusher and Tommy Ghost Parker appeared at her sides, their helpful gestures carrying clear threats. They followed her and Jenny back to the house, watching as they loaded the last few boxes Alex had prepared for this, making sure they saw exactly what she wanted them to see: clothes, photos, personal items, all carefully staged. As afternoon faded into evening, Alex made her final appearance on Main Street. The Dragon surveillance had relaxed, confident in their victory. She'd seen Marcus checking the tracking phone twice, watching her dot move exactly as expected. What they didn't know was that the phone was now attached to Jenny's truck, heading north on the highway. Meanwhile, Alex's real operation was about to begin. Back in her house, she activated the hidden panel, revealing her tactical gear. The lumber mill security cameras, compromised months ago, showed increased activity: trucks moving in and out, Dragons setting up for the midnight delivery. They were so focused on watching her leave town, they never noticed the careful positioning of FBI teams, the subtle movement of local police into strategic locations. Her secure phone lit up with a message from Cooper: confirmation on your mystery man. Robert Sullivan, former Army colonel, dishonorably discharged 3 years ago after an investigation into missing weapons, never prosecuted. The pie clicked into place. Sullivan was their source, a bitter ex-military officer with access codes and contacts, using the Dragons as his distribution network. His appearance today wasn't an accident. He was overseeing the biggest shipment yet. Alex began her final preparations. The modified tactical vest slid on smoothly, each piece of equipment precisely where she needed it. Her wheelchair, stripped of its civilian disguise, now showed its true nature: reinforced frame, puncture Proof tires, hidden compartments holding enough firepower to take down a small army. The sun was setting as she ran. Through her mental checklist one last time, the dragons thought she was running scared, already miles away on the highway. North instead, she was about to become their worst nightmare. Her phone buzzed a message. From Marcus to the tracking phone. Keep driving, sweetheart, don't stop until you hit Canada. Alex smiled in the growing darkness. The dragons had spent all day watching her leave, never realizing they were the ones being watched. In a few hours, their empire would crumble, and they'd learned too late that sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one they've already dismissed. The real operation was about to begin. Darkness settled over the lumber mill like a shroud. Alex positioned herself in the shadows of an abandoned office building, her wheelchair completely silent on the gravel thanks to its special modifications. Through her night vision scope, she counted 12 dragons patrolling the perimeter, all armed with military-grade weapons. They'd stepped up their security tonight. Sullivan's influence, no doubt. Control. I have eyes on the primary entrance, she whispered into her secure Cal multiple Tango heavy weapons. They're expecting trouble. Cooper's voice crackled in her ear. Sullivan just arrived. Black SUV, diplomatic plates. He's not even trying to hide anymore. Alex watched Sullivan emerge from his vehicle, his military bearing obvious even at this distance. He walked like a man who'd never lost his command presence, inspecting the dragon setup with clear disapproval. Marcus trailed behind him, trying to look important. Shipment late. Sullivan's voice carried clearly through Alex's directional microphone. Your people better not have screwed this up, Marcus. The buyers aren't known for their patience. Relax, old man, Marcus replied, lighting a cigarette. Ghost is escorting them in personally. 20 minutes tops. Alex's mind raced. Ghost wasn't at the mill, which meant the real shipment was coming from a different direction. The convoy they were all watching for was a decoy. Cooper, she whispered, check the back roads near Miller's Creek. Ghost would use the old logging trails on it. A pause. Damn, you're right. Thermal imaging shows 3 trucks moving through the forest. They're bypassing all our checkpoints. Alex smiled grimly. The dragons weren't completely amateur after all, but their clever route had a fatal flaw. It would force them to cross open ground between the tree line and the mill's loading dock. Perfect. She began moving her wheelchair, absolutely silent as she repositioned. Years of training had taught her to use terrain to her advantage, and her lower profile in the chair actually helped her stay hidden. The dragons were all looking for threats at standing height. Nobody thought to check ground level. A new voice crackled over her. See, Agent Winters, this is Team Bravo. We've got movement at the north end. Rants 4 SUVs, cartel plates. The buyers. Alex confirmed. Right on schedule. Hold position until my mark. Sullivan was getting agitated, checking his watch repeatedly. Where the hell is Ghost? The buyers are here. Patience. Colonel Marcus sneered, emphasizing the rank. Sullivan no longer held. Not everything runs on military time. Alex could see the rage flash across Sullivan's face. Interesting. There was tension between them. She filed that away as potentially useful. The first rumble of engines emerged from the forest. Ghost's convoy, right where she predicted. 3 black trucks running dark, using the terrain for cover. They planned this well, but they hadn't planned for her. All units hold position. She whispered, wait for my signal. The next few minutes were crucial. The buyers were approaching from the north. Ghost's convoy bow from the south. Sullivan and Marcus stood exposed in the middle, waiting to oversee the exchange. One wrong move would send them all scattering. Alex watched through her scope as Ghost's trucks emerged from the tree line. The lead vehicle's headlights flashed twice a signal. The buyers' SUVs responded with their own flash. The trap was about to close, but not the one the dragons had planned. Command, I'm moving to position 2, Alex whispered, wheeling silently through the shadows. Her chair's custom suspension handled the rough terrain perfectly, keeping her stable as she positioned herself behind a stack of lumber. She could see everything now. The buyers approaching cautiously. Ghost's convoy rolling in from behind. Sullivan and Maris in the middle of it. All the pieces were in place. Years of planning, months of undercover work, all coming down to this moment. Sir, a new voice on the comm. We've got a problem. Second buyer group approaching from the east. Not part of the plan. Alex's blood ran Cole, the second group, meant this wasn't just a sale, it was an auction. The dragons were playing both sides, driving up the price. By making the buyers compete, it was clever, but it also meant twice as many armed hostiles about to converge on their position. Cooper, she whispered, "We need to move now. If those groups meet, this turns into a shooting." Gallery negative, Cooper replied, "We don't have containment on the second group. Hold position." Alex watched as the situation grew more volatile. The first buyer group had spotted the second and hands were moving to weapons. Sullivan was shouting at Marcus, who had drawn his own gun. Ghost's convoy had stopped, caught in the middle. Then she saw it, the slight nod between Sullivan and the second buyer group. This wasn't just an auction gone wrong, it was a double cross. Sullivan was playing everyone. Cooper, Sullivan's working with the second group. This is about to go hot. Before Cooper could respond, Sullivan drew his weapon and aimed it at Marcus's head. "Did you really think I needed you people anymore?" he snarled. "You're just the delivery boys. My real partners are here now." The lumber mill erupted into chaos. The first buyer group opened fire, thinking they'd been set up. Ghost's convoy drivers scrambled for cover. Marcus' men started shooting at anything that moved. Alex stayed perfectly still, her military training taking over. Let them fight each other, let them thin their own numbers. The real trap wasn't the FBI surrounding them, it was the crossfire they created themselves. Through her scope, she watched Sullivan backing away from the firefight, moving toward a side exit. He wasn't surprised by the chaos. This was his plan all along. Let the gangs kill each other, take the weapons, and disappear in the confusion. "Cooper," she whispered, "Sullivan's making his move. Permission to engage." There was a long pause, filled with the sound of gunfire. Finally, Cooper's voice, "Do what you have to do, just stay alive." Alex smiled grimly, unlocking her chair's hidden compartments. It was time to show them what a disabled veteran could really do. The lumber mill had become a war zone. Muzzle flashes lit up the night as three different groups exchanged fire, their shots echoing off the metal buildings. Alex moved through the chaos like a ghost, her wheelchair's dark coating blending with the shadows. Sullivan was heading for the eastern exit, thinking he'd orchestrated the perfect distraction. He was wrong. Alex positioned herself behind a forklift, watching Sullivan's route. He moved like the soldier he used to be, staying low, using cover. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He was looking for threats at eye level. Nobody ever looked down. "Team Bravo, maintain fire on the main group," she whispered into her. "See, keep them pinned down. I'm handling Sullivan." A bullet pinged off the forklift above her head. The first buyer group was spraying ammunition everywhere, more concerned with volume than accuracy. Amateur move, they'd run dry soon. Sullivan was 30 yards away now, moving between crates. Alex did some quick math. Trajectory, wind speed, distance. Her modified rifle was perfectly balanced for chair height shooting, the recoil compensator designed for her unique position. She hadn't missed a shot in 3 years. Going explosive, she warned. "Command 3-2-1." The flashbang sailed through the air, its arc perfect. It landed exactly where she calculated, 3 feet behind Sullivan. He noticed too late. The explosion was deafening. Sullivan staggered, disoriented. That's when Alex made her move. Her wheelchair could hit 30 miles per hour on flat ground, silent as death. She crossed the distance in seconds, ramming directly into Sullivan's legs. The impact sent him sprawling, his weapon clattering away. What the Sullivan blinked, trying to focus. His eyes widened as he recognized her. The __ from town. Alex's first strike caught him in the throat, a modified knife hand attack, perfectly adapted aid for her seated position. Sullivan gagged, stumbling backward. "Surprise," she said coldly, blocking his clumsy counterattack. Her next hit targeted his knee. She knew from experience how vulnerable legs could be. Sullivan went down hard. He was trained, but he'd never fought someone like her. Every move she'd learned in the military had been rebuilt, redesigned for maximum efficiency. From a wheelchair, his experience was working against him. He kept trying to adjust for a standing opponent. "Federal agent," she announced, securing his wrists with zip ties. "You're under arrest, your FBI." Sullivan laughed through his pain. "They're really scraping the bottom now." Alex tightened the zip ties deliberately. "Actually, I'm the one who's been tracking your operation for 3 years." Those weapons you've been stealing, we've got every serial number, every buyer, every corrupt officer on your payroll." A burst of gunfire interrupted them. The firefight was intensifying. Marcus had realized Sullivan's betrayal and was leading his dragons in a full assault on the second buyer group. Cooper Alex called through her, "See, Sullivan is secured. Moving to phase 2, copy that. Teams are in position. Hit them hard." Alex zip-tied Sullivan to a support beam, then moved back toward the main fight. The dragons were caught between the two buyer groups. Taking heavy fire, perfect, she reached into her chair's hidden compartment and removed a small drone controller. 3 years of preparation had gone into this moment. Every shadow of the lumber mill concealed a surprise. "All units, gas masks on," she ordered. Then she pressed the button. Smoke canisters detonated simultaneously across the lumber yard, filling the air with thick white clouds. The dragons and buyers panicked, shooting blindly into the smoke, but Alex could see everything through her tactical display. Her wheelchair's modifications proved their worth as she moved through the chaos. The rubber-coated wheels were silent on the concrete, the reinforced frame deflecting stray rounds. She was a ghost in the smoke, striking and vanishing. The first dragon went down to a perfectly placed shot to the leg. The second caught an elbow to the solar plexus as she glided past. Years of combat training combined with her unique perspective made her nearly invisible to the standing fighters. Contact left, someone shouted. "The feds in a chair." What? Marcus's voice was incredulous. "Find her." But finding Alex in the smoke was impossible. She designed her wheelchair to be virtually silent, its profile too low for traditional combat tactics. Every disadvantage they thought she had became an advantage. The smoke was starting to clear when she spotted Marcus trying to rally his men. He was shouting orders, attempting to organize a retreat. Not this time. Al moved into position, her rifle steady, one shot to disable, just like she practiced thousands of times. The round caught Marcus in the shoulder, spinning him around. Winters Cooper's voice was urgent in her ear. "Second buyer group is making a break for it. They've got 3 crates of weapons." "Not happening," Alex replied, already moving. Her chair's electric motor could outpace a running man, and she knew the lumber mills lay up better than any of them. She cut through the warehouse, taking a route they wouldn't expect. The buyers would head for the south exit. It was the only way that seemed clear, but Alex had prepared for this. "Command, execute containment protocol Delta," she ordered. Wheeling into position, "Let's show them why you don't underestimate someone just because they're in a chair." The night was about to get very interesting. The second buyer group ran straight into Alex's trap as they rushed for the south exit. Motion sensors triggered automated barricades, sealing them, and their confusion was evident as heavy metal gates slammed down, blocking their escape. "What the hell?" The group's leader spun around, searching for another way out. They had 3 crates of weapons, but nowhere to run. Alex's voice came through hidden speakers surrounding them. "Federal agents, drop your weapons and get on the ground instead." They opened fire, bullets ricocheting off metal walls. Alex watched through her tactical display as they wasted ammunition on shadows. 3 years of planning had turned this lumber mill into her personal combat zone. "Poor choice," she muttered, activating the next phase. The sprinkler system activated, but it wasn't water that rained down. A specially designed sedative mist filled the air. The buyers stumbled, their shots going wild as the drug took effect. Within seconds, half of them were on their knees. "Control south sector contained," Alex reported, moving to her next position. "How's the main fight?" Cooper's response was tense. Marcus rallied some of his men. "They'd got Ghost's weapons convoy, and they're trying to break through the east perimeter." Alex smiled grimly. "Not for long." She wheeled silently through the warehouse, taking a parallel route to Marcus' group. Her chair's custom suspension handled the debris strewn floor with ease, keeping her stable as she moved into position through the gaps in the crates. She could see Marcus leading 6 dragons toward the east gate. They were dragging weapon crates, moving as fast as they could while carrying the heavy loads. Marcus's shoulder was bleeding from her earlier shot, but rage and adrenaline kept him going. "This is impossible," he was shouting. "One fed in a wheelchair. She can't be doing all this, boss. We need to drop the crates." One of his men gasped. "We're too slow. Touch those crates and I'll kill you myself." Marcus's voice was desperate now. "This is our ticket to the big leagues," Alex keyed. Her calm Cooper, "I've got eyes on Marcus moving to intercept. Be careful, Wainers." He's cornered and desperate. Alex positioned herself at the end of the row, calculating angles her wheelchair gave her an advantage they hadn't considered. She could shoot from underneath the storage racks, through gaps they'd never think to check. The first dragon went down with a shot to the leg, crying out in surprise. The second caught a round in the shoulder before they even realized where the fire was coming from. "Down, get down," Marcus screamed, finally dropping his crate finder. Alex was already moving, circling to their flanker. Chair's silent motor gave her perfect mobility. While they crashed around like bulls in a china shop, she picked them off one by one, non-lethal shots, just like she trained. Marcus was the last one standing, spinning wildly, trying to locate her. "Show yourself," he roared. "Face me like a real fighter." "Okay." The word came from behind him as he turned. Alex's chair burst through a stack of empty boxes. Before he could raise his weapon, she was on him. Her first strike caught him in the wrist, sending his gun flying. The second, a modified leg sweep she perfected, took out his knee. Marcus went down hard, staring up at her in disbelief. "How, you're just a underscore." Alex's next strike silenced him, a precise hit to the jaw that she'd practiced countless times on the underscore. "Who just brought down your entire operation," she said calmly, securing his wrists. "And I did it all without standing up." "Agent Winters." Cooper's voice was urgent. "We've got a problem. Sullivan's loose." Alex's head snapped up. What? How? He had helped one of the guards, was on his payroll. They're heading for the north loading dock. Alex quickly zip-tied Marcus to a support beam. "Not for long. This ends tonight." She moved through the warehouse with renewed purpose. Sullivan was the key to everything: the weapons source, the military connections, the corrupt officials. They needed him alive, and talking. The north loading dock was the mill's highest point, overlooking the entire complex. As she approached, she could hear helicopter rotors in the distance. Sullivan had an escape plan. "Cooper, I need backup at the north dock," she called. "And someone get me eyes on that chopper." But as she reached the dock's entrance, something felt wrong. The door was open, but no guards were visible. Sullivan was too good a soldier to leave himself exposed like this. It was a trap, and Alex was rolling right into it. The first shot caught her chair's armored backrest, proving her paranoia right. Sullivan had set up a kill zone, expecting her to rush in, but he'd made one critical mistake. He still thought she needed the chair to fight. Alex smiled in the darkness. Time to show them what a disabled veteran could really do. The helicopter's searchlight swept across the loading dock, casting harsh shadows. Sullivan had positioned his remaining men well, 3 shooters with clear lines of fire covering every apparent approach. But Alex hadn't survived Afghanistan by being predictable. "Cooper, maintain radio silence unless emergency," she whispered. Going dark, she detached her chair's backup battery pack, a custom piece of equipment that looked innocent but contained enough explosive power to breach a steel door. Years of being underestimated had taught her to weaponize everything people assumed was medical equipment. The first guard never saw it coming. The battery pack sailed through the air, detonating against the wall behind him. The explosion wasn't lethal, but the concussive force and shower of debris sent him sprawling. More importantly, it drew everyone's attention up exactly where Alex wasn't. She was already moving, sliding from her chair into a practiced combat crawl. Her upper body strength, developed through years of adaptation, led her move silently across the concrete floor. Sullivan's men were still staring at the explosion site, never thinking to look down. "Where is she?" one of them hissed. "The underscore has to be in that chair." Alex allowed herself a grim smile as she pulled herself behind a crate. People's assumptions about disability were always their weakness. The chair wasn't her prison, it was just one of many tools. Sullivan's voice carried from above. "Find her. That helicopter's our only way out." The searchlight swept back and forth, creating moving shadows that Alex used for cover. She reached up to a hidden pocket in her tactical vest, removing 3 small devices that looked like gaming dice, another custom design. Electromagnetic pulse generators disguised as medical equipment. The first one rolled under the helicopter, its magnetic surface clicking quietly against the landing strut. The second and third followed different paths. Positioning themselves around the loading dock's power distribution box. Boss, we need to go. One of Sullivan's was getting nervous. FBI teams are closing in, not without those weapons manifests. Sullivan growled, there are insurance policy, and not without putting that federal _ in the ground. Alex triggered the EMPs. The loading dock plunged into darkness as the power died. The helicopter's electronics sputtered and failed, its rotors winding down with a whine. In the chaos that followed, Alex made her move. She pulled herself up onto a loading pallet using the height advantage. The first guard was 3 feet away, night vision goggles rendering him blind. In the sudden darkness, Alex's strike to his cord artery was precise. He was unconscious before he hit the ground. The second guard spun toward the sound, but Alex was already moving. She used his own momentum against him, a technique she'd modify from her Marine combat training. From the ground she could target knees and ankles with devastating efficiency. He went down hard. It's a trap. The third guard's panic was evident. She's not in the chair, she's his warning cut off as Alex's garrote wire caught him across the chest, pulling him down to her level. A quick strike to the temple ended his resistance. Sullivan's voice cut through the darkness. Very impressive, Agent Winters, using your disability as a tactical advantage. But you've got it wrong. This was my trap. Lights suddenly blazed from hidden positions. Alex found herself caught in multiple spotlights, temporarily blinded as her eyes adjusted. She saw Sullivan standing on the loading dock's upper level, holding a tablet computer. Looking for this, he waved the tablet. Every weapon shipment, every buyer, every corrupt official, all the evidence you spent 3 years collecting encrypted. Of course, the passwords die with me. Alex stayed low, analyzing angles and distances. You really think that tablet is your way out? The whole mill is surrounded. Sullivan laughed. You still don't get it. Why do you think I let you track this operation for 3 years? Why do you think we let you get so close? A chill ran down Alex's spine as the implications hit her. You knew. From the beginning, of course. We knew. You think you're the first agent they've sent, but you were perfect. The disabled veteran, so determined to prove herself. Every move you made, every bit of evidence you gathered, it all went exactly where we wanted it. Alex's mind raced. 3 years of investigation, all the evidence stored on secured servers that someone else had access to. Your boss, Agent Cooper. Sullivan's smile was cold. He's been working for us from the start. Right now he's wiping every server, eliminating every connection. By sunrise, none of this will have existed. The sound of approaching vehicles grew louder, but they weren't FBI trucks. The engines were wrong. More of Sullivan's men. So you see, Agent Winters, your greatest weakness wasn't your disability, it was your trust in the system, the same system that sent you to Afghanistan, that took your legs, that made you think you could make a difference. Alex's hands clenched into fists. Everything she'd worked for, every piece of evidence, every sacrifice, all part of someone else's game. But Sullivan had made one critical mistake. He thought this revelation would break her. You're right about one thing, she said quietly, reaching for her final hidden weapon. The system failed me. That's why I stopped trusting it 2 years ago. Sullivan's smile faltered. What, Cooper wasn't the only one playing both sides? Every piece of evidence I sent him, copies went to someone else, someone even you can't touch now. It was Alex's turn to smile. Did you really think a disabled veteran would trust the system that betrayed her without a backup plan? The real operation was about to begin. Sullivan's confident smirk faded as his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his face darkening. What did you do? Check your secure servers, Alex said calmly, still positioned on the ground. Every single one. Sullivan's fingers flew across his phone, his expression growing more desperate with each swipe. Impossible. These are military-grade firewalls, and I had 3 years to crack them. Everything you've done, every weapon you've sold, every official you've bribed, it's all being uploaded to every major news outlet and law enforcement agency in the country right now. A new sound cut through the night, different helicopters coming in fast. Not Sullivan's backup. These were military birds. Those aren't FBI helicopters. Alex continued. That's the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. Remember them, Colonel, your old unit They're very interested in where their missing weapons went. Sullivan's face contorted with rage. Cooper, get me a secure line to Cooper. Now he can't help you.